We'll call this committee of the whole meeting to order on January 14th, 2025 at 6:08 p.m. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And before we get going, we've had some feedback about it's hard for people to hear us when we speak, so please try to speak into your microphones if you could. Thank you. Okay, first up is public participation. Do we have anybody who'd like to speak under public participation? Okay, for the record, there is no public participation this evening. The first item up is item number 4, request a permit for the 4th Annual Logan County Pride Festival, Saturday, June 7th, 2025, from 12 p.m. to 9 p.m. Ms. McClellan.
I just had a couple of questions. It was a little bit odd, this one was, because it's 6 months out, and I don't think we usually see stuff, we usually see it like 2 weeks or 4 weeks. So I wondered if that's probably why they didn't have insurance yet, I imagine.
Yeah, because they don't want to buy the insurance now when it's not till what, June?
Yeah.
Month, yeah.
Can you,
But they know when I got this, I told them, and they're going to send it to me when it gets closer. Yeah.
how, do you know, so you can actually get insurance for an event at any time, or?
Well, but if if it's 6 months out, I don't know if they make you pay for it right then. I mean, I don't know how that works. So if you,
Sure,
even if it's not till June, if they make you pay for it and it falls through that they don't do it, then they're out. It's just a lot of hassle.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking, that it's like, if you can get it, or I know that we usually don't wait till the last minute. I mean, at times if we have to, right? So it's not a problem if they don't come in until the last. I mean, is there a certain time where you want them to do it?
What, the request?
No, not the request, but the insurance. That can
Just as long as I have the insurance before the event happens.
Okay. And the other thing that just popped into my mind was with a lot of times with nonprofits, there's a churn in membership and things like that. So maybe since it's 6 months out, which is kind of different, we want to make sure that their contact information is still good. Whoever is currently on it is still the person that we contact if there's an issue or something like that.
Yeah, and in fact, the person that this is not the same person that did it last year.
Yeah,
So,
see,
yeah.
it just kind of
Yeah.
churns sometimes. And just try to get like a little process in there, since this is the first time I've seen it this far out. But
Yeah. I think they're just afraid that they want to start they want to start planning
yeah,
and wait too late for approval,
lose your date.
lose your date or, yeah.
Yeah. And the third just question that popped into my mind was, I'm sure it probably goes on Streets and Alleys calendar.
Yes.
So even though it's 6 months out, it's not going to be something where we're going to plan something with the streets. I mean, it's going to be top of mind at that time where it's not.
So when it's approved, I send Charity and Walt an email, and Charity actually puts it in the calendar so they know when to do the road blocks. And then on our calendar, we have downtown events to where we put that. We would put that on that day. So if another event comes up, we know, well, something else is going on, this day.
Just one more quick question, and that's, do you ever have somebody try to book like 2 dates? Does that ever happen where you have 2 people trying to book the same date, or? Has that happened before?
The only thing I think we had is when the downtown businesses was doing something.
They were doing
it was when the Mustang show wasn't it?
Yeah, it was like Downtown Express or something like that. It was a downtown event to promote retail sales.
So
And
is
then,
it-
and then
I
an
forget what they
event we
call it.
approved at the same time. So that's why we have this calendar. So hopefully that won't happen again.
So is it pretty much first come, first serve, or?
From
For
well,
actually a road closure like that, I don't think we've ever actually had 2 people that's asked for the same day.
I don't think we have either.
Unless they were working together, like the Up and Smoke barbecue,
Yeah.
it's going on, and then I just got the request for the 5K for that weekend. I mean, it's the same weekend, but it's, they're
Different, yeah.
working together, yeah.
So if, just theorizing here, so if you got 2 people that wanted on the same day, and you had one that had committed and did have their insurance, and you had one that wanted it or had it first and didn't have their insurance, then we're not sure if the person without their insurance is going to come up with it. I mean, have you had people cancel before?
No.
No. Okay. I just
Not
wanted,
even a rain out.
okay. Just wanted to make sure that we had a process in place if that did happen, that we knew what to do in that
What to do,
situation.
yeah.
So, okay, thanks.
Alderman Bateman.
To clarify for Ms. McClellan, so like the event insurance that we get for Up in Smoke, those kind of event insurances are like 60-day or 45-day policies because of setup and those kind of things. And then plus you got to add all the riders on there, like ours, I think is a $2 million policy, and we have to put Doc Dogs on as a rider, KCBS on as a rider, whoever we rent the stage from as a rider. So they're short-term policies, and that's usually the case with nearly every single event policy. So that's why people like every year, this be our 15th or 16th year, we won't have insurance till like 40 days out because it's only a so many day policy. So it's too cost prohibitive, and it just doesn't make sense to insure all this stuff, way before. So that's why we would probably bring ours forward here pretty soon, because we've already got teams signed up, and we're pretty much getting it nailed down to the footprint where we're at. So we'll be asking for road closure, but we won't have an insurance policy until just before the event.
Any further discussion on this item? Place it on the consent agenda? Okay. Place item number 4 on the consent agenda. Next item is item number 5, resolution authorizing execution of a service agreement with the lowest responsible bidder for the supply of electricity for residential customers and small commercial retail customers who do not opt out of such a program. Mr. Hoblet, you want to speak about this resolution?
Certainly. This is the resolution that we had last time we did this. I believe last time we did this was in January of 2021. It's necessary to pass a resolution for the aggregation for benefit of our residential customers and the small businesses, I believe, that we listed on there last time previously. So I believe it's become now and due in time to do this again, and it's before you now. And if there's any questions about the aggregation process, I would recommend not directing that towards me, but to another individual who has a little bit more relevant information in regards to said aggregation process. But we've done this before, at least on several occasions. I think we did in 2020 and then 2021, and then we did it for 4 years, and now we're going to be doing it again. So,
And this resolution is the authorization because if you remember, the market's constantly shifting. And so the individual group that we work with on this, once they determine that they've got the best rate locked in, then they say, we need to move now. And passing of this resolution authorizes the mayor to sign on behalf of the city to lock in that rate. Ms. Rolfs?
Do we have a lot of different companies that submit, we're talking pretty much about electrical aggregation?
Yes.
And it seems as if we've had one company that we've used for a while. Are there other companies that are,
We use Stone River Group,
right?
and Stone River the last time we went out, and so they're the broker, and we ended up with them as a broker last time. Also, they go out and they work with suppliers, and there's not a lot of suppliers. There's a handful of them that they work with, and they're constantly monitoring to get the rates based on the pool that we're a part of as part of their aggregation. So
Is that what we're looking at now, or are we looking at a variety of different possibilities?
this is to use Stone River, but allow them to tell us which supplier that they believe gives the residents of Lincoln the best rate. Right now, it's Constellation, but that could change depending on where the market's at.
Okay. Well, we get stuff in the mail, and you want to make sure that if the city's doing something, I'm not getting something that we're not looking at.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Any further discussion on this? Place this on the regular agenda?
Yes.
Okay, we'll place item number 5 on the regular agenda. Okay, we'll talk about each one of these, but 6, 7, 8, and 9, just for reference, these are all projects that IDOT is looking to close out the paperwork on. They are projects that have already been completed some years ago. And so this is really just passing a resolution to allow us to close out the projects with IDOT. We'll let Mr. Landers speak more about that. So let's start with number 6 and we'll go from there. Item number 6 is the resolution, section number 94-00076-01-TL in the amount of $127,000, $127,163.07 for construction of lighting improvements. Mr. Landers, do you want to speak about this?
I can only assume that this project was the lighting downtown when they put up the decorative streetlights, I believe. We don't have a lot of background information on these, so we're not sure. We're just kind of guessing. But basically, the situation is that they had a resolution for a certain amount of MFT money, and they spent more than what the resolution was for. So what they're doing is appropriating the additional funds that were paid out above and beyond what was the first resolution was for, just to balance out the accounts so they can close out the sections.
Any questions for Mr. Landers? Ms. McClellan?
So, like, for instance, number 6, there was an appropriation and the 127,163 is what was spent over the appropriation?
Correct, yes.
But these projects have already been paid for, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay, so this is already out of the budget line item that has already been paid for last year, or?
No, this was years ago,
1994.
1994.
First two digits, first two numbers is the year.
Yes. So these are from 1994.
And none of us were here.
Basically, they're just trying to clean up the records and close things out so they can balance everything out.
Is the council in favor of putting this on the regular agenda?
Yes. David was for.
Okay. Moving on to item number 7, the resolution section number 98-00083-00-TL in the amount of $140,447.06 for installing traffic signals at the intersections with Zion Lutheran School Road and interconnecting the signals and improving Conley Road.
And what year was that one?
1998.
Yeah.
Place this on the regular agenda.
Is that what the 98 number is?
The first two numbers in that section number, yes. So the next one will be 2000 and then 2002 after that.
That was the year that the project was open.
Yeah.
So if you look at anything to do with the Fifth Street Road, it's 98 also, because that's when it was started.
Yeah.
It was the year that it was initiated.
Okay. Let's place this on the regular agenda.
Yes.
All right. Item number 7 we'll place on the regular agenda. Next is item number 8, resolution section number 00-00086-00TL in the amount of $2,794.05 for traffic signal replacement and resurfacing.
And where was that done?
The traffic signal replacement from 2000, Woodlawn to Keokuk, I believe.
And then Keokuk to North Union Street.
Place this on the regular agenda as well.
Yes.
Okay. Next is item number 9, resolution section number 02-00090-00-RS in the amount of $196,558.18 for resurfacing of various city streets in the downtown area. Alderman Downs?
Regular
Okay.
agenda.
Okay, regular agenda?
Okay, can you, with all of these and the amount of money, now what we're saying, these have already been spent, money that we did a long time ago,
Correct,
Yes.
and so it's nothing that's coming out of our budget now.
correct.
Okay.
Okay. We will place item number 9 on the regular agenda. Hold on one second, please. Okay, next up is item number 10, resolution for Fifth Street Road Project, section number 98-00081-00-PV. Mr. Hoblet.
So with this respective resolution, the powers that be at the state of Illinois have demanded that a resolution be passed before the Fifth Street road construction can begin proper, or before the final authorities or the final approvals can be rendered. This was paperwork that Hanson, I believe, assisted with us. They assisted. I spoke with our contact at Hanson for the numbers and for some relevant information to put on this resolution. It is a very bare bones resolution. It is the format that the state of Illinois demands, and I filled in the respective boxes to the best of my ability. It might change between now and the voting session on Monday, but this is yet another hoop that they have asked us to jump through, and from which hopefully the council can acquiesce to further this project along.
Regular agenda? Okay. Place item number 10 on the regular agenda. Okay, next up is item number 11, discussion of longevity pay for non-union employees. I'll preface this topic with, I know Mr. Bateman put this topic on the agenda. I think he wants to have a conversation with the council so that we are well in advance of budget talks regarding salary increases for employees. And I don't know that this is meant to be a lengthy discussion. We'll see where it goes. But I think it's meant to be a thought starter. And I know Ms. Rolfs has provided a handout as well. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Bateman and you can take it from there.
Okay, as Mr. Welch stated, and I have been warned by the city clerk, we're not going to argue about this for a very long time. And my intention is to get the thought process started and to table this every single cow until we feel comfortable that it's votable. So not to kick it down the road. That my intention is this to be on every cow until we vote. So every year, I'm very passionate about it. Obviously, everybody knows that. But we've been waiting on a report for the last 2 years, and Mrs. Rolfs actually brought up longevity last year. So I thought I would take it upon myself to put some figures together for you guys for the non-union employees. Now, I took two employees, but the first one, there is it 4 employees that are making the same amount? Three employees that make the exact same amount. So I took that one.
There's 4.
Is there 4?
Don't talk.
Okay,
one?
so there's 4 employees making the exact same amount. So
Oh, Ashley, okay.
this, and Mrs. Rolfs can talk about her sheet, but this is my proposal. The union contract states that the union employees get a 4% pay increase. During that entire argument every year, it's always percentages come out. So let's take the first 4 employees. This is my proposal. Their base salary is $43,750.40. They would get the 4% increase, which is what the union gets. That's a increase of $1,750.02. Now, the union contract has a longevity schedule built into it for 4, 7, 9, 11, 14, 16, 18, and 20. Where I have a problem, and it's actually unobtainable, is in the union contract, at the 4-year mark, they get a 4% increase. At the 7-year mark, they get a 7% increase. 9-year mark, they get a 10%, 13%, 16%, 20%, 24%, and 28%. We actually have employees that are getting 20% increases because they're at the 14-year mark plus the 4% that's built into their contract. That never gets brought up when I'm arguing about the 8 girls. We just vote and just skim off the fact that we're giving people 20% increases. We can't do anything about that. That's in their contract.
Mr. Bateman, before we go further, For the sake of this discussion, can we refer to them as women or ladies? Or
Non-union.
you can, or employees, but I just want to make sure that we're using proper language when
Okay.
we're referring to these employees. Thank you.
All right, so what I'm proposing, which I think is a financially responsible proposal, and it does benefit the employees, is leaving the years the same, 4, 7, 9, and so on. But I am suggesting a 2% increase across the board. So at the 7-year mark, they would get a 2% increase. The increase is calculated on their base salary. It's never calculated on their new salary. So for them 4 people, non-union employees, for those 4, they would receive at the 7-year mark 4-year mark, a increase of $875.06. That's because it's generated off their $43,750.40 base. At the 7-year mark, they would get $875 because it's always generated off their base. But they'll get the $875 when they reach these longevity milestones. I took another, that would bring when they reach the 4-year mark, they would, their salary would then be $46,375.42, which is $2,625.02 above their base. So, is everybody following along here? That is with their 4%, yes. Yeah, that's 4% plus the 2%, brings their total to $2,625.02. So the 4% was $1,750.02 plus the $875 for the longevity.
So when we look at the budget, and we look at longevity, that is in addition to whatever percentage we give to them for a raise.
Correct. Correct. But my proposal is a flat 2% on their base across the board. That's because I was working on this today also. I have a scratchy piece of landmark paper. So let's take another employee. We have another employee whose base is $48,072.80. A 4% increase, same as the union, is $1922.91. A 2% on top of that is $961.46 for a total increase of $2,884.37. Now that's when they reach the 4-year mark, or the mark that they're reaching. So that $961.46 would not be added to their increase until they reach the next milestone, and it's always going to stay that amount because it's based on their base salary when we pass this.
So, not to interrupt, but you mentioned the additional 2%. Refresh our memories on where that comes from.
Me just coming up with 2% because I don't think 7, 10, 13, 16, or 20% is sustainable.
Okay.
Again, this.
Would be based on what they are currently, which we have those figures in here too, Katie did provide that too, like charities is 43,000 and Susie's is 53,000, blah, blah, blah. So 2%, that's where that 2%, I think, is that what you were asking, where did that 2% come from?
So is the 2% the figure that we agree to for the increase across the board?
For longevity only. The 2% is longevity increase.
Okay.
The 4% is based on the increase that other unions are getting.
And that 4% amount would be for then years 5, 6, and then for 7, when we did the
Correct.
That amount would be for the 7, 8, 9.
Okay. Mr. Parrott?
So Kevin, in your numbers there, just real quick, thank you for bringing this forward. I mean, we had discussed, different percentages and such, and whether to do an incentive or not. And I still have the Excel spreadsheet that I did that I'm looking at, and whether we did a 3 1/4 or 3%. You're suggesting a 4%, but a 2% longevity for those years of expansion there. So did you calculate what it would be? So let's say somebody came in year 1. Do we have a baseline for them? And then after, say 25 years, what that salary would look like?
So, okay, and Wanda, I'm supposed to tell you your microphone is not on.
Well, now who told you that? Who's
Hey,
squealing on
hey,
me?
It happened, I'll go ahead and say this, it happens to be Nyla.
Oh, tell them now that I said thank you.
So yes, Steve, I'm saying once we vote, whatever they are making right now, that is what we're establishing as their base salary.
Right. I'm just asking.
Normally, a longevity doesn't start till about the 4th year.
Right.
But that is up to the council to determine.
Right. I just want to kind of look at if somebody started, brand new, what would that base be? And then after 20 years, what would that salary look like, just to kind of have an idea of what it is
Okay,
for,
so
for our taxpayers?
that's a very good question. The base salary would be based on whatever Mrs. Bateman, Walt Landers, and the chief of police, if one of those people left, they would have to determine what they're going to pay them. Because the problem is, from an employer, I have employees that started hourly a few years ago, and I know we're getting off track, but I'm just trying to prove my point here. Person got hired on at $13 an hour, and I gave them $1 an hour increase every year, and they're now at $15 an hour. Well, the new state law is a person walking in the door, I have to pay them $15 an hour. Is that fair to the guy that worked his way up to $15 an hour? So you can't establish a base for these kind of jobs because it's going to depend on what year they left, what the current wages are, what the field is, their what they bring to the table. So the base is going to have to be whatever you started out at the day or year you were employed. Okay, that's all I can go about on that one, because 10 years from now, I doubt it we're going to hire anybody in the office at a walk-in salary of $43,750. That would be laughable in 10 years. I almost guarantee it.
Well, how did we handle that with Ashley Montalco? Didn't the council come to an agreement on that amount?
Yes.
So I would assume that that's what the council would do, Steve, is that if we have a new employee, if it's not a department head, then we as a council would determine what that beginning salary level was.
But
Well-
but the actual department head would bring that person's name forward and say, this is what I want to pay them. Yes, by our statute, the council has the final vote. But in my opinion, it's up to that person that's doing the hiring of what the person's worth, and this is what I think I want to pay them.
Well, but I was talking
so-
about Ashley, which is what we did.
Yeah, I would say that if the council really wanted to get some clear direction on that, because there's no ordinances that establish the base salaries, that they could take the job descriptions for each of them a little further and put a salary range in place, and then increment the salary range periodically based on the economy and other factors. But I think that's a step that we'll have to address after we address this one, if I'm understanding this correctly. Mr. Parrott?
Yeah, just for example, with the spreadsheet that I worked on last, if you had a person starting off at year 1, 38,192, let's just say, just a number I got from trying to figure these things out, about $18 an hour, and they worked and got a 3 1/4% raise. No, I'm sorry, a 3% raise every year over a 27-year period, and that's not including any longevity. Their salary is $87,505. Just kind of, that's without any longevity.
But I'm,
And that is over 27 years. I get that.
before we get into the weeds, I told Mrs. Rolfs this on the phone. The entire council, it's online. You should look at what some of the other people are making, and that's where not this conversation should even begin to be going, okay? If we're worried about paying somebody $46,000 or $50,000, we got some people that are well above that, and they deserve it. It's not that they don't, but it's like we're trying to pinch the little person just because. And again, I just wanted to start the conversation so that we can eventually get to a point where we vote. So come budget time, we're not sitting here having the argument that we always have. It's set in stone. They're going to get the same increase that the unions negotiated, which in this case is 4%. I just want to change the longevity percentages because the union that I'm looking at, that is, I don't know why anybody agreed to some of this. You're giving some of these people who are making double what some of these others are 20% increases.
Yeah.
So if,
No,
you-
I
if we're going
agree.
to sit and argue about it,
Well, it's not arguing. We're just talking for discussion because we got taxpayers that we have to be accounted
Correct.
to. And so if you're suggesting that some of these unions are being they're getting too much or they're getting too generous of an increase or whatever, and the next negotiation, their increases aren't 4%. Let's say they're 3% or they're 2%. So then does that then impact the non-union?
it's
You know what I'm saying?
well that's just it. We would have to come back and discuss it. But I'm trying. We still have a while that these contracts are going on, so we would have to discuss it. I'm just warning the council that if you look at the longevity, I'm first of all I want to say this: I'm not trying to or want to change any current employees' pay at all. I'm saying what I've suggested the state of Illinois needed to do years ago is you establish a fact of anybody that's employed right now, this is what you get what is wrote down and promised to you. I'm saying at one point, this city council has to really consider picking a date, picking a year or whatever and say, current employees, you're not affected at all. But we're going to have to work something else out for new employees going forward because if we stay on this track, it is unabstainable for this city 10, 15 years down the road. So I don't even want to discuss any employee that is currently on the payroll at all. I want them to know that. We're not discussing it, not even thinking about it. I'm trying to establish a way to pay the non-union people until the next union negotiation, then we can work on it again. So I'm saying for this year, my suggestion is a 4% pay increase for what they're making now. What they're making right now is the base before the 4%. So offer them a 4% increase, and for those that meet the years of service levels that's already in one of the union contracts, give them a 2% increase on their base for those levels of work until the council comes forward and discusses something else.
Ms.
I-
Ad-
We
Then
have
Ms.
We had a lot of
things already
discussion.
before.
Okay,
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Bob.
Ms. Ross.
Rhonda's had her hand up for a while.
Oh,
Ms. Ross and then Ms.
okay.
Ms. O'Donohue.
I think when we started this discussion last year, there were several things that we were trying to consider as to what you could establish as ways to pay people. And since we don't seem to have, at this point, a lot of different ways that we look at an employee and incentivize them to do certain things so that they can go. You know, when I was in teaching, we had, every time we got new classes that we had to take to improve ourselves, you got credit for that. Well, that isn't available to all of our employees. Sometimes you might have some of the workers that they go take special training, or they have to have special licensing to do certain things. You can use those to come up with a plan to pay your employees. We don't have that for some of our employees. There's nothing out there that says, I would like for you to go to this training for 6 months and we'll add that to your resume. So we don't have any resume building activities for most of our people. So that's when we started the discussion about longevity. That is one way you can give them. I should like having something that you can add to your resume, because it makes you feel better as a person to know you now have accomplished one more thing, but we don't have that. So that's when the longevity came up in there, and I think that when I went online and looked at the fact that other towns in the state of Illinois are using plans like that, and that's why I gave that to you, and I hope that you get a chance to read this before we go into what our next meeting discussion is on this, is, you know, are there some other ideas in those plans that could be creative and we can use? This is one, and when Kevin and I talked about it, he says, I'm gonna give you one. He says, from there we go, we build. And that's what we're still trying to do, is build what it is that we think is best for our employees, to make them feel like we really value them.
Agreed. Ms. O'Donohue?
So for me, it's a little confusing seeing that there are people here that have started in many different years. You know, some have been here 13 years, 3 years, 7 years, and the salaries are kind of all over the place. There has to be a starting salary, and there has to be a capped salary. Otherwise, we're going to have people who have been here for 20 years making $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 a year, which is, again, unsustainable for the kind of work that's being done. So I think the longevity is something that needs to be talked about. The salaries are something that need to be talked about, but there also has to be a cap to the salary. Like, it can't just be, it can't just be that we keep adding and adding and adding and adding and just letting it get completely out of control for the kind of work that's being done. I mean, making $90,000, $100,000, I mean, it's a little mind-blowing for me.
That's exactly why I say council members are not looking at all the employees we have, all of them. You're saying $90,000 is mind-blowing. We got people making way more than that, or knocking on the door of it, and not even been here 20 years yet.
But
So-
did you hear what I said? $90,000 for the kind of work that's being done. We have to also look at the kind of work that's being done.
What? How do you how do you differentiate the importance of work?
Well, I mean, you have police officers and firemen that are making, yes, much more money. More money than women, non-union employees who are, you know, sending out bills, answering telephones. There's different levels of work, which also call for different levels of pay. But I think if we're going to leave this as an open-ended number, then you've got people, non-union employees, who are doing jobs making $90,000, $100,000, but the people who are paying their salaries that are doing the same jobs in our community are making $40,000 and $50,000. So now those are the people that you're asking to pay these absurd salaries of $80,000 and $90,000 to people doing the same jobs that they're doing, because that's how other entities work. There's a starting base and there's a salary cap.
This is what I hate about open meetings. I can bring up names of clerical people making more than that money on our payroll. So that's so.
Okay, but who sat here and who has been negotiating these contracts for all of these years? Have you been sitting up here negotiating these contracts and voting on them all these years? No. Mrs. Rawls?
No.
The people who have been up here, you guys have not been voting on contracts for these people?
Oh, we have. but-
Council's been voting on the contracts, but I don't believe there's anybody on the council currently that,
I was on the last one, and Steve was here.
Yeah, I
which,
guess
but you didn't sit in a contract negotiation, correct?
One,
Which one?
fire.
And then the other two departments, those individuals are not here. But that's okay. I mean, that's part of having a council and the cycles of elections and how that works, is that people will come and go. I think that because I don't want to go down the rabbit hole either. This is meant to be a thought starter, really. But we have a couple different things going on, and we talk about this the last few years, is we have collective bargain contracts that have been negotiated, and then we have employees who do not have a contract that establishes their salary. And I think that's what the goal here is to not necessarily give them a collective bargaining agreement, but to put a process or a policy in place that at least gives them an idea of where they're headed as far as their career goes and helps them plan. If we have that in place, it also helps us with our budgeting process every year. And it also helps the council have these conversations. These conversations become easier. So, Ms. McClellan, did you have something you'd like to say?
I was just curious, just as a base starting point, I wondered if anybody had come to you, Mr. Bateman, and said, I'm unsatisfied with my salary, especially after the last 2 big bumps they've had. I mean, I'm not sure that they are entirely not satisfied and not thankful for what they have, as opposed to, I don't know, have you heard from a bunch of people who are?
I am not any person on this list supervisor. You would have to ask their supervisors. I personally think they're okay with what they're making, but are you willing to sit in the same job and make the exact same amount of money year after year after year? I'm talking about their annual increase. That's all I'm talking about right now. Not their base. I'm talking about their annual increase. That's the only thing we vote on at budget time is their annual increase. We can do this whole base thing. That can be a whole different topic. I'm trying to establish what their annual increase will be this year, and I think by looking at the budget contracts, it will go into next. If we vote on this, it would be for 2 years, because then we would be in new union contracts at that point. Am I correct?
This year, aren't they? They're this year.
Yeah, but that's for next year's.
Is it 26? Deputy Chief Comstock, did you have something?
Yeah, I don't know how much I'm allowed to interject in these discussions.
Well, you're over a department and employees, so.
Okay. I have 2 great clerical people. They do 2 different jobs, and their jobs are different from anybody else that does clerical stuff in the city. And everybody is their own cog on the wheel here. But we individually do our own department budgets, and we're the ones that work with those people hand in hand every day. Why is it not up to the department head to decide if that person deserves something more? One of my clerical staff just went through education to be a digital forensic examiner, to extract data, to examine it, to do analyst type stuff. That's not something a typical clerical does. She also handles all of our evidence and is our evidence clerk. When you go to court, these things are vital. Her role is extremely vital to our agency. I have another one that I can yell from my office about a number I need on something, or who do we use this and she'll have it. So I think when we do our budgets, we evaluate our people, and I think as long as everybody in the room is being honest with each other, we can reach an agreement at what that person deserves for a raise coming up, right? You guys have a lot to keep track of as council members. There's 15,000 people out there, but I can give you input on 2 people and what they deserve, right?
Treasurer Conzo.
Thank you, Mayor. Deputy Police Chief is kind of, what he has said is something similar to what I was about to say, which is there's a much easier way to do this. It does not have to be this complicated. When we have meetings with the Budget Committee, the supervisors can bring forward what they think those employees should be paid, which is, I think, what the Deputy Chief was referring to. Same thing would apply to the Fire Chief, same thing would apply to the City Clerk, Building and Zoning Officer, and the Street Superintendent. Decide what they think they need, bring it to the Budget Committee, who would then bring it before the council. If the council is not in agreement with it, they can, you know, say, no, we're not going to do that. We think we should pay them less. Or they can agree to it. This doesn't have to be as structured. I realize with a bargaining unit contract, you have to structure those things. But this is different, and these jobs do vary a lot. If you don't think some of these jobs are complicated, I've seen some of them on a day-to-day basis, and they are. If your accounts receivables are a mess, then your payables or your payroll or any of those other things that some of these employees do, if you're not well trained and alert to what you're doing, you're going to have serious problems. So there are, this may not be, you wouldn't pay them the same as you would a firefighter or police officer, but these are worthy jobs that deserve decent pay. And I think the best approach to it is have the department heads make the recommendations for what they would be. The council always has the opportunity to disagree with that and turn that down, but I think if department heads come forward, both in the committee meetings and before the council, and present a good case for what those should be, I think that would be advice well taken by the council.
Mr. Bateman, Mr. Parrott, and then Ms. Rolfs.
I can go last, because at the end of my conversation, I was gonna make a motion to table.
We're not in a voting meeting, so you're okay.
No.
Mr. Parrott.
So, what would be something that is deserving and something that is sustainable? Such, how would you factor that? So, I mean, all of your employees are I'm assuming all of your employees are well deserving of, compensation for the work that they do. Sometimes well deserving, it isn't in, the coffers of the city. Now, we're talking 8 people, right? Could we do it? We could. I mean, that's what I think our treasurer is saying. We could do it. We could, do this. Other things would be impacted somewhat, but well deserving versus, should they get an 8% every year? I mean, they're well deserving. So how would you figure that?
What we've kind of done is kind of the same thing that the chief and I did for comparable salaries for ourselves, and looking at agencies our size and their clerical staff and what they're paying them, and taking a look at it's basically the same thing we do with contract negotiations with our officers. We're looking at it through the same light. Obviously, these people aren't under contract, and we're not entitled to anything, but you got to be fair, because if I have a clerical person working for me making $45,000 a year, and they can go up to Morton and make 75 just driving up the road, they're going to leave. Or they can go down and take a state job that's doing something even less. So we take a look at who's doing what in other agencies, and the chief and I have lots of contacts with pretty much every other agency in Central Illinois because of what we did in our careers. So we can reach out pretty easily and find out that information. And that's kind of what we based, I think, how we arrived at where we're at with our employees. And I think that's what we would continue to do. And we continue to evaluate ours every year when we talk about it, when we sit down and do our budget. I only have 2. And I can't speak for everybody else, but that's manageable for us to look up and figure out every year. I don't know what it's like when there's 6 or 8 of them in one office, so it's more daunting. The total was 8. Okay, all right. Well, see.
Mr. Parrott, anything further? Okay.
No, I think I'm okay.
Okay, Ms. Rolfs.
In our discussion, I'm talking about Mr. Bateman and mine the other day, it came to my attention about one of the employees in our office downstairs. And we have someone down there that, of her own accord, has taken classes and is doing a job that we can hardly find other people in Lincoln to do. But we don't know that. I don't think that we're as knowledgeable about what our employees do. And so it's like, okay, well, what's Julie Landers doing? What are some of the special jobs that she may have that other people don't? Well, we don't know that. I didn't know that till the other day, and now I know. But in order for us as a council, we need to have also a starting point from the perspective, I think, of whatever department it is. Yours is very specialized in what they do and what they have to do. I don't know if yours are also, as far as the people that you might have.
I don't have any clerical staff, unfortunately.
So what do? Do you just do it yourself?
Yeah, I do everything myself. I'm going to be asking for extra staff in our next budget talks.
So when we sit around, we talk about that, but we really don't know our own departments and what they do, and if they have specifications. It's like I said, if that person does this and they do it on their own accord and they go take classes and they have to do extra work, then we should know about that and therefore be able to say this person deserves a little bit higher income. So I think we need to have a starting point about what do these people do.
I think you just made an argument for allowing the department heads to set those salaries because they do know their employees, and they can probably, each one of them, look at each of their employees, if you asked them and gave them a name, and tell you who they are, how long they've been here, what certifications they have, what's training. And that's part of being a department head, is we need to lean on them to help us make those employee decisions. We set salary. We're fiscally responsible to the taxpayers, but I think their input is just as important.
Well, and I was kind of saying that, but it's not that, okay, they should do this, but we don't need to know what our employees are doing.
Correct. I agree with you.
We do need to know what our employees are doing. We do need, I would love to have some of them come up and give them verbal recognition at meetings when they've done something. And I was talking about Julie Landers, but she's a notary public. They are hard to come by anymore.
There's three of us. There's three of us.
And City
There's
Hall.
3 notaries downstairs.
But,
Yeah. Mr. Rolfe, say anything further?
That's fine.
Mr. Bateman?
Okay, in closing,
Yep.
the funny part is, that's what I originally wanted to bring forward. I'm an employer. I agree with the deputy chief. I've said it for the last couple years. I'm just going to say what I told Mrs. Rolfs on the phone. It's none of our business. They're the department heads. My boss does not come to me at all and say, what is that person doing? And why is this person doing that?
But he
I
doesn't
literally
have a
just
citizenry
hired
that pays taxes.
I literally just hired 2 people. I hired them. I interviewed them. I gave them their job description, 2 totally different jobs. I set their pay. I signed it, sent it upstairs to him. He gave me a call and said, "You're okay with this?" I said, "Yep." He signed it and done. We're done. That's it. They're my employees. They're
But
my
they're not
employees to
tax
hire.
consider-
They're my employees to let go. They're my employees to train. They're my employees to give them their job description. I just gave one a raise because he's worked for me for 2 years and has stepped up and done everything extra that I've asked, and he deserved a raise. I gave him the increase. I have always argued that the department heads know their employees best. It is the council's job to look at the budget, decide whether we can live within that budget. It is the treasurer's job to say, yes, this is the line items, this is our budget, this is what we're going to spend, this is where everything's at. We're not financially golden, but we're far from being strapped. We just invested $1 million because we had extra money. So now I'm kind of torn. I would like to just, when the budget comes forward, we sit down as the council, we look at the budget and say, Mr. Conzo, can we live with these in these means? The department heads, are you going to make sure you live within your means? They say yes, and we decide on it. all the projects move forward, all the equipment gets bought, everybody gets paid, and we move forward. But instead, that always comes off like the Led Zeppelin when I bring it forward. So instead, I brought forth this. So in closing tonight, and we'll put it on the next cow, please decide. Do you want to take the advice of the treasurer and the mayor and the department heads and just let them do their job, and all we have to do is run the city and make sure we stay in the budget? Or do you want to go down the road of taking these 8 employees and have a structural pay increase like the negotiated in the union contracts, so we can move forward and quit having these discussions? And in closing, I want to say this. The people that are employed in this city right now, especially the contracted union employees, I'm never going to vote to change your pay structure as it is. I'm talking about new employees going forward, the ones that are going to replace you when you retire, or replace as the low man on the totem pole. This city, with the contracts we have to change that structure somehow, or we will be in the financial scrap. We can't keep offering these kind of benefits. That's what I'm saying. I don't want, if they want to call me, I'll explain it again, but I'm not talking about anybody that's employed right now changing anything.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, if there's no further discussion, we'll bring this topic back at another committee of the whole, and then we'll see how we move forward with that progress on that. Okay, brings us down to announcements. Does anybody have an announcement that they'd like to make this evening? Mr. Landers.
Yes, the landscape waste facility will be closed again tomorrow due to the cold temperatures. It looks like Saturday's going to be decent. The weather's going to be fairly warm, so we'll have it open again. Christmas tree pickup starts tomorrow. They'll be out starting at 7 o'clock, going down the streets, picking the trees up that are on the curb. And tomorrow is the only day that the pickup is, so they need to have them out for tomorrow.
Okay.
So we'll probably be shutting the landscape waste facility down here before the end of January for a few months until spring cleanup.
Okay. Mr. Parrott and then Mr. Bateman.
So Walt, thank you for getting back on the, I don't know what you call it, the utility for the cyber, or for the high speed fiber. The location, I don't know if you drove by it yet or not. I put a flag, an invisible fence flag that I have around my yard in it, because
They have not repaired it yet?
No, and it's a hole, twice as big as this laptop.
Okay.
With a hole, and there's people that park on the street there. I don't know if they're designed for people to travel over it. I don't know how it happened.
After we've plowed twice, I assume once the snow melts, there's going to be a bunch of them that's tore out of the ground. They're just not in good places.
And we're not, the city's not responsible to replace them, but we're going to have more timely replacement of those, because we're going to have vehicles with problems driving over it.
I mean, we can put a barricade on the one that you're speaking of, get something to cover it.
Yeah,
because
we got snow up around it,
All right.
And it's not a good situation. And if you're, like you said, it's probably happening across the city.
I'm sure that we took several of them out while we were plowing snow. I can almost guarantee you we did. So
thank you.
But I'll reach out to them again, and we'll get something over it.
Yeah, because it's not good.
Alderman Bateman.
So I'd just like to announce that earlier in the week, GFL is not allowed to have a Facebook page. So the mayor and I and a couple others, we're trying to do as best we can. They usually contact one of us if there's a weather-related event and they can't run, and then we try to post it on the city Facebook page and the city website as fast as we can. So if that comes up, please, be aware they close or don't run for the same weather reasons, for the safety of their employees and stuff, and they actually start at 5 in the morning. So just be aware, that if there's a delay in your trash pickup, we will try to keep that information updated as fast as we can. They are a large conglomerate company, and they're not allowed to have a online presence like that, so they communicate with us, and then we're going to try to communicate that out to the citizens.
Ms. McClellan?
I was just curious, has the Christmas tree pickup been out on Facebook for a few days or
It's a few weeks.
a few weeks? Okay. I haven't seen it yet, so I don't know how I missed that, but thank you very much.
Okay, any other announcements this evening? Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Or a second? Alderman Parrott made the motion to adjourn. Alderman Sanders second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? This meeting is adjourned at 7:09 PM.